Can I pour you some water?
I would love it. Thank you so much. That takes care of how to start
That's
the
how it's
Q&A.
maniacal.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Shana, for inviting me here.
Let me ask you some questions.
Okay, great.
All right.
Let's do this.
So what are some of the attributes of feminist horror?
In real life?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start with real life.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I think that women have, like, women know horror. Women own horror. We know pain. You know, we own pain. We bleed and bleed and bleed and bleed. I mean, literally, and who hasn't woken up to a crime scene? I mean, in a bed by yourself, you know, we're sort of like, who got slaughtered last night? The guys are like, what? Or they're like, yes. And you guys are good partners. I have children, you have children. Childbirth. I mean, Alien cannot compare.
Right.
Really. And we know fear, you know, from the moment that you understand words. You are taught that you are prey. You're prey. And we have been the subject of almost every horror film. Mm-hmm. We have been bludgeoned, and our dead bodies have been bludgeoned.
Naked bodies.
Naked bodies, you know, and followed and stalked and hunted and haunted and you know, it just feels like there has been, in the past, more than 10 years, but I would say in the past, let's say decade, you know, so many female directors who have just said, like, actually, this is our territory,
right?
You know, and we're going to take it back, and we own it. And somehow it's actually been a space where a lot of people have stepped aside and said, actually, you're right this time, you know, like, we will step aside. So, and it comes from real life. I write from real life.
Mm-hmm. So the dead female body,
mm-hmm.
as we said, the dead naked female body is a trope in horror films. But in this film, Carolyn is not just fully clothed, but she's also active. Mm-hmm. She evades discovery, she moves, she unites the girls in song. What made you make her so active? Why is she such an active part of the story?
Well, I wanted to make a film that took on that trope, you know, and just leaned into it and didn't say, well, I'm going to make a film that's kind of genre-esque or genre adjacent and avoid the thing that has been so problematic in genre films, which is the dead, naked teenage girl. And I wanted to kind of claim it and decide that I would give my dead, not naked, like insanely clothed,
mm-hmm.
Teenage girl kind of wacky agency. You know, she's not a zombie, she's not a ghost, but she has will and agency in her death. So much so that, you know, her like aura vibrates into her glasses and into the cell phones of her friends. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not a religious person. I'm not sure that I'm even a spiritual person, but I like to think that things, which include all of us, you know, have some kind of aura or energy, you know, and if you kind of will yourself into this world, into someone else's life, or, you know, the afterlife, whatever that means, that it matters. So I didn't want to just make a horror film that was kind of like, oh, I'm going to make this thing that completely avoids what's so problematic about so many horror and thriller films. I'm actually going to like take it on and make my dead girl a kind of superhero.
The title is really interesting to me because the title refers to violent death, and it also alludes to the act of cutting, which is associated often with teenage girls. Neither of those things factor into the film, and in fact, Carolyn dies of an accident and heart failure. So, what does the title mean to you, or what's the role of knives and skin in the film?
So originally the title was As with Knives and Skin, as though it was the end of a sentence where you were saying this, you know, the whole preamble was this whole kind of, you know, manifesto about, in a way, like women and trauma. And then the end was like, as it is with knives and skin. And no one could, pardon my French, remember the as with part. You know, so I mean, they were like, I was like, we're making this film called As with Knives and Skin. They're like, Azerbaijan, what is this? And so then we really just started calling it Knives and Skin, Knives and Skin, Knives and Skin. But the Knives and Skin part was really the most important part, right? Which is like, knives are utilitarian. It's a tool. It's also a weapon. And skin, in a way, is also a tool and a weapon, you know? And we talk about like thick skin and thin skin, referring to just kind of emotional capacity, you know? So it still is, in a way, the end of a sentence that's about trauma and violence and vulnerability and protective measures, tools, you know, all that stuff. But I also really wanted to make a film that at the end of the day was about kind of like female friendship and survival strategies and human relations, like all that soft stuff. But I wanted the title to feel like really tough AF. You know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also been a little bit of backfire, because some people are kind of like, I really wanted it to be about knives and skin. You know, which I'm kind of like, maybe just check yourself on that. But I really wanted, like, you know, I really wanted this kind of like tough title about the softness of human connection.
Well, the opening image also has that knife in it, which is then used in a utilitarian way, but incorrectly, to open the door.
Right, but I'll tell you something. That's been the question that I get asked the most. They're kind of like, why was that woman carrying that knife? Was she going to kill her daughter? And I was like, no. I wanted the film to start off in this way that you feel like it's like that classic horror. We're following a woman through the house. It actually came from a night that I was watching Rosemary's Baby, which is a film that I love, but I do not support Roman Polanski.
I hear you.
But there's a beautiful scene at the end of that film where Rosemary is walking through her apartment with the exact same shot, going to her child, her devil child. I'm spoiled it for all you guys who haven't seen it.
Still worth watching, but we don't support Roman Polanski.
Yeah, but really, that guy. But I wanted to start out like it's a horror film, you know? And then you realize, right, she's just, you know, unlocking her daughter's door. And of course, I mean, you know, the woman who was dealing with props had like 10 knives, you know? And there were some that were totally realistic that would still open that door. And I was like, that one, that big long, you know? And she was like, nobody would, and like, Jimmy a lock with that knife. And I was like, who's in charge? You know what I mean?
It would have been really just
if she had like a little butter knife.
Yeah.
Come on.
Would not have worked.
No, that's going to be like the Weird Al Yankovic, you know, version of the film.
So why does
I'm killing it, aren't I? Good luck with Kelly Reichardt next week.
I know.
I mean,
I know.
I'm just kidding. I adore her. But really, good luck.
So why does Carolyn's body evade discovery? How is this linked to female invisibility?
So I really had this idea, and it maybe doesn't quite work logistically in the film, which I totally own. But I sort of had this idea that the kind of worry in the town was a kind of like vibrating energy, which I do think happens. I actually do think we're experiencing this right now with the kind of coronavirus thing. There's a vibrating sort of energy that I wonder, can that be metaphysical? Can we be transformed by a kind of psychotic collective, breakdown? So I wanted the worry of the town, like, where is this girl? Where is she? What happened to her? To be a kind of collective, vibrating worry that, like, reanimated her body, This kind of energy focused on where is Carolyn Harper, just totally focused on that, which in a way had a way of reanimating her body. That's one way I was thinking about it. And I was also thinking about the reality that girls and women go missing all the time.
Yeah.
And they are sex workers, and then people don't care. They really don't have anyone connected to them who care. They are either never discovered, or they're discovered in places that are very, very remote, and some hunter finds a jawbone or something like that, So I wanted also to make a film about a dead girl who wanted to be found, who was, in her death, with that death aura, vibrating herself into a place where she could be found, And of course, like, we see her collapse on the kind of boat launch. We don't know that that's where she dies,
right.
Like, she could have actually expired someplace much more remote, where she would never have been found. So there's something about, like, I just wanted her to have agency even in just how she was discovered. I mean, it's really, which is another thing. It's like, back to your first question. I mean, the reality is that girls and women go missing constantly, and trans women go missing, sex workers go missing, indigenous women go missing. Like, the odds are incremental when you get past white women,
right?
And it's it's a product of our culture.
It's interesting that I should point out too that Alex Moss, who plays the creepy English teacher, is a graduate of this program. He was my student. In real life, he's not like he was in the film.
Oh my God, he's so sweet.
He is very sweet.
He's so nice.
But he has a line that he doesn't remember. He said, "Who is your missing girl?" And he doesn't remember the name of his missing girl. This idea that all communities have a missing girl, and all generations too. So music is so important in the film, and actually in your work in general. So remind us who Jenny Connor is, and tell us about working with her and the role of the all-girl choir.
Okay, so I have worked with Jen for the past, 8 films, maybe. And the first one I worked with her on it's A Million Miles Away. You can find it on Vimeo. It's totally... Was that a clap or a... Oh, that was okay. Yeah. I thought you were like, boo. People hiss. So A Million Miles Away, it's... Hi, Angela. Dance. I see you over there. But it's A Million Miles Away. It's available on Vimeo, my Vimeo page. That's the first time that I had used singing before, but I was always kind of like, can you sing? And they're like, no. And I'm like, great. Just terrible, sing that song, And but I knew for A Million Miles Away that I actually needed a choir to sing a song. I needed a song to be rearranged. I needed to be retaught and conducted, etc. So Jen graduated from the theater and music program at UIC, where I teach, and she's this like really, she literally has a voice like a harmonica, you know, and she's lovely and lilting, and her own music is like kind of like traditional Irish music, you know. So when I was like, hey, Jen, do you think that you could rearrange Judas Priest's "You've Got Another Thing Coming" as a lamentation? And she was like, oh, I mean, she's like Snow White. She was like, oh, I'll try. Literally. And then 2 weeks later, I get this track that is just has me like sobbing. And she does it every time. And so that's the first time I worked with her, and she taught this group of girls who are not a working choir at all, but when we auditioned them, we knew that they all had to sing, which we did with Knives and Skin. All those girls had to be able to sing. Mm-hmm. Not professionally, but like just kind of carry a tune, or at least be able to, try to sing. And so Jen would rearrange the song and then teach the girls the song and then conduct the song, you know, etc. And I will not make a film without her. There will always be some sort of musical element, you know, and us Jennifer stick together. But I will never, make another film without her. I mean, she's just been fantastic. And when we were doing this, so I gave her this whole list of songs that we had already gotten all the clearances for, of course, because we were getting publishing rights for all these songs, just the lyrics, right? Because we're going to rearrange them, reperform them. It was still, we had a limit, like a monetary limit, of like what we could spend. And you'd be surprised at what songs were very expensive, or, posthumous estates. We wanted an excess song, a Prince song. It's really difficult for certain posthumous estates. I really wanted to use Lucky Star. Nobody from Maverick or Madonna's team would even email us back.
Wow.
I mean, is she still a feminist even? Maybe not. But I used another Madonna song earlier in one of my films. I'm still waiting for the phone to ring with like blocked or unknown. I pick it up and she's like, bitch. This is Madonna. And I'll be like, you from Michigan? I'm from Ohio. Do you want, let's go, Anyway, I have dreams about that.
My money's on you.
Exactly. I could take, she's like 5'2". Are you kidding me? I could take her down. I don't condone violence also, but really it was like, and then some of the songs for Knives and Skin, we pre-recorded with those girls. Jen did the exact same thing. I mean, she could, these girls were not an operating choir. She comes in, it's like a miracle. It's something that I know nothing about. I can't sing at all. But watching her transform a group of girls within 3 hours to sort of they get to know a song, they sing it, they record it, they're on to the next song. I'm just astonished. So yeah, I will never not work with her again. But every single time I'm kind of like, hey, could you turn this other song into something else? And she's like, of course, and bluebirds are flying over her. And she's like, no problem. But I'll say this one last thing, and then I'll let it go. But she, with Knives and Skin in particular, she didn't tell me this until after the fact. But that something very similar happened to her when she was in high school. That a girl had gone missing. And that she had a dream that the girl had drowned, and the next day they found the girl in the water. And so she was like, I've always felt really connected to that missing girl story. She had that, but she felt really connected to it. And she, it didn't impede her ability to, do it, but she was like, wow, I had a lot of my own kind of emotional vibrations coming into this project.
Mm-hmm. How did you get connected with Nick Sinner from the Yeahs?
So one of his musical friends, Joshua Zucker, who I knew from SAIC when I was in grad school there and I was teaching there for a little while. and Joshua was a student there for a little while. Joshua was like, moved to New York, was a kind of like a goth band guy who knew Nick. They were friends in the goth band thing, etc. And I got commissioned to do a short film through a festival in Montreal, the Festival Nouveau de Cinéma. It was like they call it like a carte blanche. You can like do whatever you want. They give you 2,000 Canadian dollars. And so I wanted to try out this idea of just documenting a teenage girl's bedroom, in a kind of forensic way, as kind of like, the girl is not going to tell you who she is. We're just going to look at her bedroom. And so so Joshua, I reached out to him. He's in LA now. And I was like, I would love to shoot something with you, and I want to shoot it in LA. Let's shoot something together. And his wife knew the woman whose daughter we shot the bedroom in, whatever. And so then Josh was like, I have an idea for who might be really good to do the score. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. I'm down with that. And I had worked with a guy who had done the scores for a lot of my films previously. And he was like, it's Nick Zinner. And it's like, I'm not somebody who's like looking at the names, right? So I was like, yeah, cool. Like, just connect to me. Mm-hmm. So I was like, hey, Nick, I'm Jennifer. I'm making this short. Would you like to do the score? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then, of course, by that time, I was like, oh, yeah, right. This is the guitar player for the Yeah, Yes. And I paid him like $400. And when I did that, he was kind of like, wow, thanks for paying me at all. Right? And I just was like, then you realize this, like the music industry is like also shady as hell. You're like, okay. So then, and it was great. I loved working with him. It was very symbiotic. Mm-hmm. It was like just great. It's like, old goth kids, reclusive goth kids who can just text, like I was telling you, kind of like more moody, no response, next day later, new sound file, more moody. That's it, And so when I got the green light to do Knives and Skin, I emailed him again and was like, here's the script. I would love for you to score this feature. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks, and I was just like, oh my God, I've totally crossed the line with Baby Vampire. Like, it just really wants to be left alone. And I'm a Gemini. I'm also like chatty. I talk fast. I was like, I really scared him away. I didn't, obviously. But like, then he responded, was like, oh God, we do the all thing. He was like, I thought I had responded to you and I didn't. Yes, 100%. Yes. And that was it, And he said, yes, I had never met him in person. Mm-hmm. They were coming on my birthday, May 29th of 2018, the summer we shot it, to play at, what's the place that looks like, it's not like Aladdin's castle. What's it called? It's like a big, old, big room with balcony, but a painted ceiling. Oh, yeah. Aragon, Aladdin's castle. I was close. So they're like, we're playing the Aragon Ballroom. Will you come? He put me in VIP. I'm never in VIP. I was like, oh, okay. Well, and I met him for the first time. And Joshua, again, the DP who introduced us, was like, look, he's very shy. He described him like a silverback gorilla. He was like, don't look him in the eye. Approach slowly. I just was like, I felt like I was meeting Nosferatu himself. I go up to him and he was just like, oh, Jennifer. Like, he came at me, bro, with a hug and was like, do you guys need music on set? And I was like, what do you mean, like music to act to? And I was like, no, because that would interfere with the dialogue record. I mean, he was just like down, wow. So down, So I looked him right in the eye.
And he didn't melt.
He did not melt, nor did I. And it was incredible. It was really, I loved working with him. And he actually made probably twice as much music as, we had originally thought. But, he got paid for all of it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was lovely to work with him, and he has already agreed to score my next film, which is also super cool. But he's lovely, and when we screened the film in LA in November, he came to the screening, and beforehand, we had drinks, and I was like, do you want to come up and answer questions? And then he became Nosferatu. He was like, no. I mean, this is a guy who really has been on stage with hundreds and he was just like, I can't talk in front of people.
It's a huge difference between performing and
100%.
being yourself in front of an audience.
And I said, can I say that you're here even? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. But it was really, and I loved that he was, the funny thing, so we finished it in, let's say, December of 2018, because it had its world premiere in Berlin 2019, and he had not seen it. He had not seen the film all the way through. Like, he was making music for little sections, and so in November when he saw it in LA, it was the first time he had seen it in its entirety. And I was like, oh God, what if he hates it? No, he loved it, of course.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's really interesting to me is that there is music throughout, and it's not noticeable in the sense that it is mixed really well. And one of the things that, the sound design and the sound mix on this film is also really incredible. And it's something that a lot of horror filmmakers get wrong because they mix the score too high. And then the score is too obvious, and it cues too much. And all the rest of the sound is, like, here it feels very even. The sound design and the score are balanced. How was working in post? Where did you do post sound?
So we did post at another country that's here in Chicago, and they do a lot of stuff for Cartempuin. They do a lot of docs. Drew Weir, who did the sound design, I loved working with him, and we did that exact same thing. We knew that Nick wasn't so ego-driven that he was like, my score must rise above. And I'm really somebody who I love a score in a film. People don't go online, don't go on Letterboxd and see what people have said about this film, because some people are kind of just like, that score is. You could play a drinking game with that score. You'd be wasted. Every time a synth, chord came on or whatever. There is somebody who actually said that. But I really am somebody who kind of grew up on music, and I grew up on films that had lots of music in it. Like, I really think about something like The Hunger, and what sort of like the Bauhaus did to that, and the way that kind of just drives the emotional temperature of that film. And so Nick was not ever kind of like, yeah, let's do this and let's do this bigger. One thing I'll say is that with Drew from another country, he was so good at really thinking about the narrative of the film. And so talking Tiger Shirt Mom, every time you see her, up until the moment when the tiger shirt tells her to get her shit together, there's like this little tiny voice. There's little voices that you hear in the background that could be a radio in the background or something. And that was really his idea to say, well, I said to him, like, I want to have something, every time that she comes on, I want to have some sound that makes the audience feel maybe not uneasy or nauseous, not destructive, but that lets you know that there's something that her character is sensing that the other characters are not sensing. And he wasn't kind of like, I have no idea what you're talking about, that isn't diegetic. He was like, yes, great. And there were so many moments like that where we said, it wasn't kind of like, what does the meatloaf slamming against the van doors sound like? It was also kind of like, what does that signify emotionally for that character? And how do we find the right slam sound that's also authentic, but that also could be slightly emotional? And so that was really important. And then the only time when I said to Nick, like, you really have to kind of like make this feel much bigger is when fake pregnancy mom and cheer daughter find Carolyn's body.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, make this moment, drive this moment home that this is a scary movie, that's a dead body. And when he sent me that track, it was like chills, because that's a beautiful, big musical moment that says everything for this town has shifted. Everything for everyone in this film, it will never be the same for them again, you know? But yeah, for the sound design, it was lots of just talking, and thank God. I mean, I will work with Drew again. You know, I mean, he was great and he got it. And I think that anybody right now who's interested in sound design, or if you're a filmmaker and you're thinking about sound design, like just that's, you know, sound for me, and I'm sure you know this too, it's like, honestly, it is the thing that completely connects someone to the image,
right?
You know, and I think there's ways to also deal with that with people who are hearing impaired, 100%. But it's like this, because sound is so abstract on some level. So the sound is what you're seeing, something that feels like familiar, and then maybe you're hearing something that's not familiar, and then when those two things meet is where you have this other moment where the director wants you to be, and it's never discount that.
Right. It's really primal too. It hits us on a level that visuals can't.
Mm-hmm.
I kept, in every scene, I was fascinated by the clothing choices that the characters made. I realize it's the costume designer, but you know what I mean. But clothing and how the characters clothe themselves, the fact that you have seamstresses in the film, and also so many uniforms, the band uniform, the waitress's uniform, the police uniform, the mascot. So talk about why is this emphasized so much in the film?
Well, I wanted these characters, I mean, the whole thing kind of hovers above reality, you know? I mean, that's true. I wanted the whole thing to kind of hover above reality. And I wanted these characters to feel not like caricatures, but like emblematic or iconic, you know, like the sheriff. I mean, it's not realistic that the sheriff would wear that outfit all the time, but I liked the idea that he would, you know, or that fake pregnancy mom, waitress, weird pink thing. That's not realistic that she would wear that all the time, you know, and she doesn't until we see her after, you know, where she's shed her fake pregnancy and then she's kind of back to something else. Yeah, so I wanted the outfits to feel emblematic, you know. I mean, I think it's really true that we do kind of, not all of us, but some people really do kind of like wear their identity on them, you know, and that feels like armor. It feels like identity. And then some people are like extra special, you know, like Charlotte with her, who's Ariane Roach, who's incredible, who's also featured in the, you know, reiteration of Candyman. She's just incredible. You know, with her kind of like dread crown and, you know, her white book report dress, which has got fake blood on the front. Like, oh my gosh, I just, I mean, I didn't dress that crazy in high school, but it was close. You know, I mean, I really curated my look very specifically. And my mom was just like, I was a ballet dancer. So my mom was like, you cannot cut your hair. You have to have your bun and you have to get good grades and, you know, like make curfew and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like such a good kid in high school, and I would walk into high school like the Bride of Frankenstein, you know? And feel totally satisfied with was like, you know, what are you going to say about it? And this was a long time ago, but I like that we, as in any time of your life, you know, that we can kind of use our hair and makeup and clothing as a kind of both communication, like here's who I am, but also armor.
The film implies that girls are more at odds with their environment than boys are, particularly in high school. Do you think that that's true?
I think social pressures are different for girls in high school, you know, and I'm being very, you know, kind of like binary about that. But I think it's different. You know, I think that what girls expect out of each other is different. What girls expect out of themselves, you know, is harsher than what boys expect out of themselves, which is completely related to just the larger patriarchy. 100%. You know, I mean, it's like, I don't want to break it down.
Why not?
About like what's happened in the past 24 hours in terms of our, you know, presidential situation, you know, but like having an ugly ass man in the White House and having two other ugly ass old white men vying for the White House. And you have like an older woman who's f***ing smart as hell, who just had to drop out of the race, who has been, cautioned about, you know, who her looks, her tone, you know, it's just, the standards are bananas, you know, that we had a really diverse group earlier on, you know, that included women of color, you know, that you know, dropped out immediately, you know, based on lots of those just what feel like petty taunting, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all actual people, and those things, you know, chip away at your soul. You know, throughout eternity. But yeah, we're, you know, and it's like we're held to different standards.
Yeah, we are.
And that's, you know, it's like, I don't know how to, I try and change that one film at a time. You know, I try and make films that say girls have power and boys can learn. You know, I don't want this film to be something that's kind of like, you know, boys are assholes and, you know, you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life, but you're also going to, you know, that's going to carry you to the White House. That's not what I want to say. You know, I want to say that, that we, and you know this, I'm the mother of 3 sons, you know, I mean, God, my poor kids, honestly, they're like sleepy, eating their cereal, 6:50 in the morning. I'm like, hey guys, let's talk about consent. You know, and the 3 of them are they're like, Mom, you know, or whatever. Like I talk to them all the time, you know, or I was saying, like, I have this like really sporty 15-year-old who he's a deep thinker, and he plays sports, and he cries on the bench sometimes at basketball when he's not doing really well, and nobody else on the bench gives a shit. You know, they're not kind of like, oh my God, you know, and he's just in his head and he's feeling it, you know. And his dad said to me just last week, I was like, is Jed okay? Is he okay? And his dad was like, you know, he's got to cut that shit out. And I just was like, I'm going to talk to you after the game. I'm not married to that man anymore, I would want to point out. But I, you know, was like, this is a young man who is completely in touch with how he's feeling, right, and he's expressing it, and none of his peers give a shit. You know, I mean, meaning that they don't care that he's crying. It's not disrupting them. They're feeling it. They let him do it, you know? So, like, step off. This is actually this is a young man who, that's exactly the kind of young man that we want. And I think that we have done this disservice as a whole kind of like culture where we, you know, say these things to girls about their emotions, and we say these things to boys about their emotions. And that's, of course, like being very, you know, binary about the whole thing, because of course there's, you know, like we also just have our culture who likes to ignore the non-binary. But I want to make these films that do this thing where you kind of point at that thing and then you try and unravel it, because I want to also unravel the myth of the mean girl. I just don't think that they're mean girls. I think they're girls who are fighting for their lives. And, when you are fighting for your life, are you kind of like, hey, I'm super approachable and nice and I'll do anything you want? No, you're just like, you're fighting. And none of that gets shed when you're an adult woman. They have other words for adult women who are fighting for their lives, which are meant to be derogatory and meant to to undermine a woman's agency. And I want to make films that just honor boys' emotions and honor girls' agency.
I have a follow-up question, but I have to tell you.
Is the board coming up?
The board is coming up. So
are we going to hit by that board in a minute?
If you have a question, we're getting to the Q&A, the audience participation portion of the evening.
Sure.
So you can make
where the audience has to sing a song, their favorite 80s song.
You can make your way over to the microphone. But I do want to ask you really quickly before.
I'll make this answer short. I'm kind of long-winded.
I like it. I like what you have to say. The focus of the film is on adolescent girls, but I was really fascinated by what it says about Gen X women.
Yeah.
And so how much of that was a consideration, or what's the relationship between these adolescent girls and their Gen X mothers? Well,
look, the thing is this. Historically, films have portrayed moms as wet blankets, dismissible, and I'm a mom, you're a mom. Any moms out there? Great. All I'm telling you is that us five could take all of you out. Really. If we shut the doors and we were like the mom's in charge, you guys should be terrified. Okay? We know things, and I'm serious. I am. You know it.
I'm with you.
So, no, I think that, it's like on the one hand, I'm totally in touch with my former 14-year-old, but now I'm an adult woman who has, children. And I'm like, I get more complicated every day. I'm a smart person. I'm complicated. I'm thoughtful. I'm weird. I'm still, I'm getting weirder every day. And I want to point, and I'm difficult, and that's not an insult. I'm complicated. You're complicated. All the other moms are complicated. All of you guys have moms, and all your moms masturbate. I just want to tell you that also. Just let that sink in for a moment. That's really true. Because there's a mom in there, she's grieving, but she's jacking off. And all your moms do that too. But like moms lose sexuality, you know what I mean? It's just like you literally in like Hollywood, you reach like 23 and you are a raisin.
Done for.
Right. And in a way, that's also, there's part of that that exists in the real life as well. And so I wanted to make these like really weird moms, one who is kind of so, maybe desperate to hang on to the attention of pregnancy and motherhood, that she will fake a pregnancy, And there was a scene where she kind of explained that got jettisoned. I think it's on the DVD extras that comes out in April. The other talking tiger shirt mom who is, in my estimation, kind of dealing with a kind of environmental illness, a kind of like 5G electromagnetic sensitivity, who's kind of checked out of being a mom, and that tiger shirt is like, you have to pull yourself together, and she does, or she starts to. And then Carolyn's mother, who also is kind of dealing with some, she is having a place where she is kind of envious of her daughter and wearing her daughter's clothes, and and that kind of a thing, and so. Is that all the moms? I feel like that might be all the moms. But I really wanted to make a film where the moms were complicated, because moms are complicated, and we don't. And that almost never happens cinematically.
Are we good for the Q&A? I could ask another question, but I feel like we would go over.
There's no one at the lit mic. Oh, there's someone.
There is someone.
This could turn into a poetry slam at any moment.
Hi. So, you've been talking about this. You've been talking about this movie as like a horror movie, but I was just curious because I know that as we were watching, like there were a lot of moments that got laughed.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question to you is, like, in making this movie, were you also thinking about like, you know, making people laugh? Like, was that a priority for you?
Yeah, for sure. I actually don't think this is a horror film. I think it's a horror adjacent. You know, I think it kind of like borrows from horror and thriller and supernatural, but I do not think of this as a horror film. It got programmed at the Tribeca Film Festival a year ago. Also, you guys, while you were in here, South by Southwest got canceled.
Wow.
The entire, oh God, I don't know how we're gonna survive. I don't know how I'm gonna do the Q&A after this, but I went out and to just get some fresh air, and in the entire of the South by Southwest Film Festival got canceled this year because of Corona. It's awful. It's awful. But Tribeca programmed it a year ago in the Midnight section, which is their like genre section. I was terrified because I thought like the genre press is gonna like crucify this thing. I mean, I didn't know how to deal with reviews from places called like Bloody Disgusting and Dread Central, you know, or like seriously like severedheadonastick.com or whatever, and they loved it, you know, which I was super thankful for. So I don't think of it as a horror film. I think of it as like horror adjacent, and I 100% injected lots of comedy in it. You know, I've always done that. Awkward comedy, you know, not so much like the stuff that not everybody was laughing at the same places. But, you know, in the real world, there are just like absurd things that happen. And if you don't notice them as visual people, as filmmakers, you know, I don't know what you're doing in film school, but that's not my business, you know? But I'm just one of those people who's like constantly, you know, noticing just absurd things that happen in the world, and I jot those down and I put them into my movies. So watch out. As on your way out, you might, if you do something awkward, I might write that into my movie.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I have more. Oh, do we have someone else?
Hello. I'm wondering if you would indulge two questions, actually. So the first one is like, I was wondering if you could talk about cinematography. And I noticed that in a lot of indoor scenes, the lighting is blue and pink.
Uh-huh.
And then the second question is, so I know you've, sorry, it sounds really weird because it's like echoing. Okay. So I can hear myself. Anyway.
That's a good sign. You should always be able to hear yourself.
I think.
But not on a mic, I guess.
I think it's coming out of the speaker. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so your upcoming film, Perpetrator, mm-hmm. I was wondering if you could talk about its relation to Cat People and whether you would consider it like a remake or
Sure.
what you're hoping to do with it.
Sure. So Perpetrator, which is in kind of in development right now, is not Cat People. I was inspired by Cat People. I wanted to make a kind of a coming of age Cat People. I wanted to make a girl shapeshifter film, which it is. It's nothing like Cat People, but it is a girl shapeshifter film. She's not a werewolf or a vampire. She's something quite different. And that's in development, not quite pre-production. But Cat People is a great film that everyone should check out. Both of them, both the Cat Peoples. And is Chris here? Speaking of cinematography, Chris said that he might come. Chris Rojano. Nothing.
He would have answered by now.
He would have. He's quiet, but he would have said like, okay, so it's very specific. So Chris Rojano, who I've worked with for about the past 7 years or something on lots and lots of films, he and I both went into this project. I said, first of all, let's make it anamorphic. We said, let's make it vintage anamorphic, so the lenses are something. So we used these beautiful Tadeo vintage anamorphic lenses, Arri Alexa. And then I said, I want the whole film to be bathed in this kind of not feminine, femme colors, like pinks and purples. Then they kind of drift into these kind of cyans, and we're going to make the whole thing, in a way, feel like a kind of like a giallo retake, right? These Italian horror films, or if you think about like Argento, for instance, Argento's Suspiria, and these kind of vintage horror films that really used light to bring a kind of a boldness and a drama to that. And the first day of production, and the gaffer, the primary gaffer, this guy, Louis Lukasik, who's actually the main gaffer on Chicago PD. He never gets to bathe anything in a magenta, but he's super f***ing brilliant. And honestly, there were so many. Well, I'll do two things very quickly. So the first day we were shooting, Louis puts a pink light way, way, way in the back of the scene. You can just see it kind of spilling out. And he comes back and he's like, "Is that too weird?" And I said, "Let's always assume that that's what we're leaning into. Let's too weird. Let's never ask ourselves if it's too weird." But then when we got to the quarry that's in Lamont. Where it was literally a quarry. We had full rates to shoot there, but there were when the sun went down, no local lights. Everybody with headlamps, skunks, coyote. It was awful. Those were the last 7 days of shooting, all overnight exteriors. And we had so Louis kept saying, I would love to be able to light the quarry, really get a condor and a 20K and light the quarry. And my producers were like, we can't afford it. And so we were kind of like, oh gosh, okay, we'll figure something out on set. We get to the quarry, all of a sudden a condor is coming down the gravel road with another truck carrying a 20K light. And we were all like, oh my God, what is going on? And it was the Teamsters from Chicago PD, who Louis had been like, hey, Gary and Sal, you guys need to forget about it, deliver the condor and the 20K down to Lamont, And I was like, do we owe them dead bodies or anything? What is gonna happen? Do I have to have sex with these guys? What is I might have done it, but I didn't. Production is hard. You're away from home for a long time. I'm kind of I'm really stressed out. I need a stress reliever. They're like, well, Sal just brought that condor for you. None of that happened. But really we did. But we had this so really but that's what I love about Chicago filmmaking. You can kind of beg, steal, and borrow, but you're not an asshole about it. So somebody's like, we love Louis. We're going to bring this condor out to set with this 20K light. We're going to come back and pick it up in 72 hours, and that's that. So get whatever you need to get done in 72 hours. And we did that. The way that whole quarry is lit, with this insane cyan light that has this. I can't even. The magic of those quarry scenes would not have been done without Chris, who knew Louis, and Louis, who knew those guys who I did not have sex with.
Awesome.
I'm a feminist, by the way.
As it should be.
Right. Feminists have sex as moms do.
They do.
I'm probably entering I'm entering a different zone.
Hi. So the actors in this movie did a really fantastic job playing these characters that were so complex and had so many different personalities, and everyone was so diverse, and they all just did a great job. Can you talk a little bit about the casting process and what you wanted and what you were looking for this diverse cast?
Sure, and I will try and keep this brief. So we used PR Casting here in Chicago, which are a fantastic agency, and honestly, the only person that I knew who their kind of gender and ethnicity would be was Charlotte, who was the kind of goth punk African American girl. because the kind of, in a way, even though it's Carolyn's story, there's a lot revolves around her. And then some parts, so when a lot of the other parts we just cast very widely, looking for a big range of people, and then you try and put the families together. Kate Arrington, who plays the fake pregnancy mom, is a Steppenwolf ensemble member. We sent her the script and she was like, I love it. I would do anything to be in this film. The person who plays her husband, James Vincent Meredith, is also a Steppenwolf ensemble member. Tiger Shirt Mom, Audrey Francis, Steppenwolf ensemble member. Her film husband, Tim Hopper, also Steppenwolf ensemble member. And when PR Casting said, I think that they kind of gave me suggestions, like these might be people who would be good for these. And they actually, except for Kate and Audrey, and actually James, Tim came in for an audition, and I'm a big School of Rock fan, and Tim's in School of Rock. Part of me was like, he doesn't need to come in. Like, I would cast that guy. Are you kidding me? But he was like, he's such a generous actor. He was like, no, I'll come in. And so once some of those people came into place, then I wanted to figure out what the families look like and who those people are. But there were some specificities, so I wanted the cheerleader. When I knew that I'd cast Kayla as the cheerleader, I wanted for her to fall in love with another woman of color. Like, I felt like it was actually that was really important. And I always knew that Irion's character, Charlotte, I wanted her to fall in love with a jock, but I wanted that jock to be also like a person of color. That also felt really important. So there's these things that I was really mindful of in terms of casting a really diverse story, which is very authentic to actually how I grew up in Central Ohio, like where my high school was and where I live now. I live in Hammond, Indiana, as I said at the beginning, which is also like a really diverse community. And I wanted to make this kind of small town drama that also says, like, small towns are full of lots of people. A small town is not like White Hicks. Small towns is everything between the coasts, and Chicago. But Chicago is like, radically diverse and beautiful. But small towns are full of lots of people, especially if you're a small town. Lorain, Ohio has a huge Puerto Rican population, there's a big factory there. And for instance, and that was the case when I was growing up, outside it. Well, I was not living outside of Lorain, but anyway, I'm just saying that that the diversity of casting mattered, but it was also a little bit of a puzzle, but I love that there are 4 Steppenwolf ensemble members, and they're all of the young people have these really robust theater careers. Follow any of them. Grace Smith, who plays Joanna with the shirts. She went from Knives and Skin to playing Joan of Arc in a production, and Jalen Gilbert, who's the kind of like African American like jock kid Jason. He is constantly in theater productions here in Chicago. And Irion, who is actually a college student in theater in Boston College, and she's just like working constantly, so, don't, any of you are filmmakers, just please, the Chicago community of talented people is just abundant.
Is there someone else?
Is it 10 o'clock yet? I feel like I've talked for a long time. I apologize.
We have another question.
Yes, this is good. Well, hello, my name is Kovana. I'm here with Free Spirit Media, and we have our cohort here. And first of all, the film was incredible, but the question that I have for you, what advice would you give to an emerging filmmaker who is currently working on a film?
Look, I think make films, I feel like we are in a time when, like you guys have better cameras on your phones than a lot of schools could give you access to, you have stories, be a storyteller. What is your story? Shoot that film. There's open source software to cut the film. It's like, I just want people to like make films and tell the story. I don't think that you need to have, I'm somebody who is scrappy. If we got quarantined in this room, we could make a film before midnight,
Camera.
and we got a lot of cameras, we got a lot of equipment. I mean, I just feel like there's an urgency to storytelling. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. Short films are people too. There's lots and lots of venues for short films. I have made, and I'm not exaggerating, maybe 45 short films, you know? I mean, they're cheap to make, they're faster to make. There's a lot of ideas that should never be a feature-length film. I'm sure we've all seen a lot of films where like, that would be a great film if it was like 90 minutes shorter. You know, and so get your ideas out there, and then like publish it, put it on YouTube, put it on Vimeo, put it on your Instagram. Like it's a totally different world right now, you know, where you can make a film with your own means, tell your own story, and launch it into the world. And you never know who's going to see it and who's going to be like, what's the next story you have to tell? Because I've got a whole bunch of money and, you know, and some other infrastructural, you know, supplies to help you do it. Just don't give yourself permission. Tell your story.
And that is a beautiful way to end the evening.
Yay.
Jennifer, thank you so much.
Thank you, Shayna.
for coming down.